Hey, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hanging On to Hope podcast.
I'm Brenda J.
And I'm Karen Wonder.
And we are HangingOnToHope.org.
This podcast is intended as educational and is not psychological or medical advice. Always consult a professional when needed, and we disclaim any liability in connection with the instruction, information, or advice given.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Hanging On to Hope podcast. This is Brenda J. We are so excited to bring Bob Hamp back to the show. Bob is a licensed therapist and founder of the Think Different Counseling, Consulting, and Connecting Center. He has been in private practice and worked in the church for a combined 30 years of practice. Besides his service of private practice and organizational consulting, he spent 10 years developing a group discipleship strategy called Freedom Ministries to help thousands of people find freedom from a broad range of struggles. Bob explained the dynamics of abuse on podcasts 54 and 55, which are just amazing. And the 1-minute trailer, wow. It is one of our most downloaded podcasts to date, and with good reason. So welcome back to the show, Bob.
Thank you, guys. Glad to be here.
Today, we're going to talk about codependency. A couple of years ago, I read a book on this topic, and I can't remember one thing that I read, which is not good. I suppose I was still in trauma brain, which so are many of our listeners. When I attend Celebrate Recovery, one of the common struggles that people talk about is codependency, and I'm always curious to learn more. So I'm hoping through this podcast, we can bring a fresh perspective and understanding to this topic.
Continuing with part 3 of Codependency with Bob Hamp.
Let me just tell my own story. My oldest son is 37. He has Down syndrome, and he's being the oldest. We were kind of discovering along the way what he is and is not capable of. And at age 3, he learned to tie his shoes. But at age 7, I was still tying his shoes. You know why? He was the slowest shoe tire. And I don't know if you think about this, but every time you're getting a kid to tie their shoes, it's because you're going somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he discovered if he takes too long, I'll just do it for him.
Yeah.
So for 4 years of it being his responsibility, I was still doing it for him until I thought to myself, I wouldn't let a client do this.
Yeah.
Right.
So I just began to plan enough time. We're about to leave 15 minutes from now.
Yeah. I remember that stage too, because you have to have a lot of patience.
Yeah.
Right.
When they're learning to read or anything like that, you just want to say the word for them. So you mentioned that letting the child fail and have consequences is important for when they get into the real world. And at home, I know I can struggle. I just have my youngest living with me, but he's 19. And I know even with him, sometimes I struggle with giving him firm consequences, like when I don't feel like he's cleaned up after himself, like in the kitchen, or just not helping out more around the house. And I think that a lot of parents can struggle with that. So do you have any helpful advice for that?
Well, do you know what consequences to give and you just don't want to do it, or you're not sure what kind of consequences?
Well, I think that's what I mean, because I threatened to if you don't start doing, I'm going to start charging you rent. But of course, I haven't sat down to actually do that, because I had it in my head that I'm going to keep track of the days he's not doing anything and just, give him a bill. And that's what I probably need to do. But it's just that, feeling like I can't do that. There's something in me that feels like I can't do that, I guess. I don't know.
And does he keep his room pretty straight or not?
He does. He didn't used to, but he does keep his room pretty straight now.
Interesting. He keeps his room straight, but not the rest of the house.
He doesn't always, he doesn't always do this, but sometimes, he'll he makes a lot of frozen food. He doesn't cook a lot, but he'll just leave his stuff out instead of picking it up right away. Sometimes it's oh, well, I'm letting it soak, but he forgets about it or something.
And what I like is what Polly said.
Yes.
She said that she would let her children fail at home and have those consequences at home. So when they got into the real world, it wasn't so painful. They understood it.
Yeah. The world is not going to be near as tolerant of our kids' unwillingness to step up and take care of their responsibilities.
Yeah.
And so, the kind of thing, and I'm not always great with this. I'm past that stage of parenting, thank goodness. But, if you can have a little bit of a sense of humor about it, you could just take all the stuff that he leaves out and put it in his room.
Okay, Brenda, I'm going to do that next time.
You don't have to make a giant leap to pay rent. And one of the things I tell people is it's not a really good boundary if you haven't first communicated it verbally.
Yeah. You're like, what are you doing?
So,
What is all this?
What, if you say to your son, hey, these things are your responsibility. And when you don't take care of them in a timely way, I end up taking care of them. So what I'm going to start doing is anything that I end up taking care of, I'm just going to put it in your room. Mom. Yeah. Well, I'm just letting you know. And so if you want to just take care of it, then you never have to worry about that.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. That's doable too.
Yeah. You talk about how the codependent is usually the one burdened and emotionally suffering and that seeks help. Can you explain why?
They carry 100% of the pain, and the person in pain wants relief. So part of the dynamic with the codependent/addict is the addict is looking for intentional, strategic ways to shuffle their pain onto somebody else. Working with a family right now, and the husband who is addicted tells a story that he said, my wife's angry about the silliest thing. I leave mail out, and I leave the mail out, for just a couple of days. And she's frustrated with me that there's a stack of mail on the end of the counter. And I said, that's not why she's frustrated. He said, of course, that's why she's frustrated. I said, no, that's not why she's frustrated. She's frustrated because what you don't do, she then feels responsible for. And he said, well, I can see that. And he said, not only that, but I haven't really, because we get bills from certain things and we get, certain different kinds of mail, I haven't really given her the information she needs to do it. I said, so you've made her responsible and you've not given her the authority to do it. I said, so really, she's not frustrated that there's a stack of mail. She's frustrated that you're not taking care of something. And as a result, it becomes her responsibility. And he looks at me and says, yeah, I can see that. I said, so the same thing's happening with your addiction. If you're not handling your pain and you're numbing your pain with your addiction, she's now carrying it around. And because she's carrying it around, she's the one who's in pain. And ultimately, then the codependent is the one who will seek help.
So the codependent's carrying most or if not all of the emotional burden, and that's why they go seek help. It's just too much for them to bear.
Yeah, and they can't do it indefinitely.
Recognize that there's pain and a problem. The addict will often say, well, things aren't that bad. It's not that big a deal.
Right. They don't mind it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not hurting.
Right. I'm fine. And I kind of wanted to talk to you about friendships, because in friendships, there can be the same kind of dynamic in play where one friend can tend to vent more than the other and they become dependent. The other person can become dependent on the person listening to them venting. Do you have any specific strategies that can help with that?
Most of the strategies that I have for that kind of thing, first of all, I'll say attraction theory would say that if we have those kind of relationships in our intimate relationships, we're also likely to have elements of those kind of relationships in our other types of relationships. If we become a special helper to our primary relationships, we begin more and more to see ourselves as a special helper, and we are both attracted to and will attract people who are looking for quote unquote special helpers. So the same type boundary statements that you quoted earlier, where you say to somebody, and, one of my favorite ones is just to say, gosh, I really hope you find a solution for that.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Because what they're trying to do is transfer emotional pain also. When one person is quote unquote venting, they're counting on your empathy to turn into sympathy. And what sympathy is a principle of physics that says power is transferred from one system to another when the frequencies match. So a sympathetic vibration is when, we talked about guitars before this. If I've got two guitars in the room and they're tuned the same and I hit the A string and let it vibrate, eventually the A string on the other guitar will start to vibrate because of what's called sympathetic vibrations. When the frequencies match, power is transferred between two systems. And so somebody who's quote unquote venting, they're trying to get on your frequency and trying to get you on their frequency so they can transfer their pain to you. And to listen and lean in and start to really feel that sympathy for them, not empathy, but sympathy for them. We start to really feel the weight of their pain, and then they walk away feeling relieved and we feel heavier.
Yeah.
But if we, what I call care, but don't carry.
Yeah.
Gosh, that sounds really painful, Steve. I hope you find an answer to that.
Yeah. I like the guitar thing too. See, that's another visual that I like thinking about.
Or we just completely tune and block them out. No, like we did with our kids. Like, wow, I'm really good at tuning them out. That's how I survived all those years.
And so if you verbalize that, remember, a good boundary is only good if you verbalized it ahead of time. Hey, Steve, I've noticed that a lot of times our relationship just seems to go one way. If it continues to be that way, I'm probably just going to stop listening.
Yeah.
Now what you said is, I'm not interested in a one-way relationship.
Yeah.
And if you continue it to be one way, I'm going to start hanging out less or listening less.
Yeah.
That's good.
That is.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of times where felt like I was in one-way relationships, men and women, friendships, and just like tell them that. I feel like this is one way.
Mhm.
That's really bothersome. It's like, no, I think I'm done with this. Then
Yeah.
you just tend to back away because it's the healthy thing to do.
Right.
And we live in a culture where ghosting has become a thing. And ghosting, unfortunately, is an avoidance of confrontation. And the problem is it doesn't really solve our problem. It kind of muffles things.
Mm.
Our problem isn't just that person was being problematic. Our problem is that we haven't learned to set boundaries.
Yeah. Because it's hard to set boundaries. I mean, it's hard to, because I know I've struggled with that, and I listened to our boundary one when I had to set a boundary with someone. And it is hard because you feel bad for the other person because they're not intending to be hurtful, but it takes vulnerability, to be able to set boundaries. So I think that's why it's easy to avoid them.
Yeah. And you can avoid ghosting with men with just not even giving them your phone number in the first place.
Right.
And that's what I do. I just don't give it out.
Yeah.
Give it to anyone because I don't even want to deal with that. I'm not in the place.
From the very beginning, right?
Yeah.
Not really letting those things in, and I'm really not giving those things out.
Right. That's what I do. I don't know if that's healthy or not.
But you can do that even in friendships, though, where you start avoiding instead of like communicating because it's easier to just, I'm just not going to answer the phone instead of like taking the time to like really talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I really want to hear that. I like the brain stuff. I've been studying the brain a lot. So you talk about moving to the upstairs part of your brain, taking a deep breath, connecting with yourself and with God, and then you'll be able to connect with others. Can you explain how to move into the upper part of our brain? I think most abuse survivors, including myself, struggle with getting out of that emotional state to the upper part of the brain. I notice even when I try to focus on tasks which use that part of the brain, I'll still get, if it's like work or something that causes anxiety, I'll still feel that emotion, even when I'm trying to switch to the upper brain. So if you can help with that, I would be so grateful.
5 minutes, tell me how to get out of the bottom half of my brain. But absolutely, some of the basic things. So let's divide the bottom half of the brain into half again. The brain stem is afraid you're going to die, and the midbrain is afraid you're going to starve. And so you have to convince yourself you're not going to die and you're not going to starve. Again, some of the things the brain is looking for is emotional and not just physical. So the brain's not just afraid you're going to be shot and die. It's afraid you're going to be rejected and die, or you're going to fail and die, or you're going to feel shame and die. And it's not just afraid you're going to starve, not get enough dinner today. It's afraid you're going to starve for connection, and you're going to starve for validation, and you're going to starve for acceptance. And so the bottom half of the brain is simply about being not dead. And you have to convince it that you're not dead. So the reason we breathe deep is because the brainstem, literally, when it releases adrenaline and cortisol, everything in the body tenses up and we breathe fast and shallow. So the reaction to the brainstem maintains the brainstem response by keeping less oxygen in the system. So the deep breathing part of that isn't just about, slow down. It's literally about a physiological signal to your brain that says, hey, she's not dying. Brainstem, you can let go. I learned something a while back that the body communicates to the brain much more than the brain communicates to the body. And when we're trying to think our way into a different state, we've missed what's going on. Oxygen gets the brainstem to let go.
That's good.
Yeah. So that's a deep breathing and yoga.
And then the tricky part about the midbrain is what we have to do is it's exactly the same thing we talked about earlier, is starve the dopamine and feed the oxytocin. Because the midbrain is saying, I don't want to fail. And at some point, we have to stop the cycle of what am I doing when I'm confronted with failure? Some people go into compulsive behavior to try to not fail. Some people go into compulsive numbing behavior to avoid the sense of failure. But either way, the compulsiveness of that is I've got to look at my compulsion and ride it out. By ride it out, what I mean is it's like quitting sugar.
Yeah.
Go through detox. But you go through the detox, not just by quitting, you also go through the detox by feeding that oxytocin. And so oxytocin does the same thing dopamine does, but with a different cycle. it's also a painkiller and pleasure producer. And so to the degree that you can get over that hump of withdrawal plus reconnecting to yourself in the places where you first disconnected, that connection to self is the key that all of us want to avoid. And connecting to self, we want 10 different things to work, but it starts with this. I'm going to stop. I'm going to deep breathe so that my brainstem lets go. All the things that my brain is asking for dopamine, I'm going to tell it no. I had poison ivy this year. I've never had poison ivy in my life, and I have never itched like I itched with that poison ivy. The thing I've always taught about the midbrain and the dopamine is I call it the scratch the itch drive. And I think I might have, if I'd have given into it, I might have ripped the skin off of my arms. Just it itched so bad.
Wow.
We have to resist the urge to itch and feed the oxytocin at the same time.
So simultaneously.
Yeah. Connect to self, and in that, learn to connect to God.
Yeah. And I like how you really can't connect with others till you connect with yourself and God first.
Right.
Everyone tries to connect with others and think that's going to fix them.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
I'm just a people person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, I just need support. Well, if you're not your own support, then that's called dependence, not independence.
Right. Big difference.
That's where codependency comes in.
Right. Yeah. Independent people can be free. Dependent people will never be free.
That is so good.
Yeah. So you say in your codependency talk that no one should make you responsible for their own emotional state. Anything you wanted to expound on that?
Yeah, it's a good time to talk a little bit about what I teach about boundary setting communication. That idea of making people responsible for your emotional state, again, is kind of those inferences or those hidden messages that people, like we talked about, feeling responsible for your mom when she was crying and the kind of the mirrors that take place. People have all kinds of ways to transfer that responsibility, many of them nonverbal. In fact, most of them nonverbal. And so most people aren't going to say, hey, would you carry the burden of my emotions? What they're going to say is, I'm really having a hard day. And then they kind of look at you like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And the moments like that are when you learn the difference between empathy and sympathy, and you don't shoulder what they're saying. Sometimes I visually picture my hands up and saying, you matter to me, but let's find a solution that you can implement.
Yeah.
I want to tell you that you're valuable. And so the reason you shouldn't let someone else put their emotional state burden on you is because A, it's not good for you. You can't do push-ups and make them strong. But B, it's also harmful to them. Like the two twin boys, it keeps their legs weak and unable to stand, especially if mom walks in the room. And so just developing the strategy of boundary setting communication that goes like this. The covert message, hey, I want you to carry this for me. You make that message overt and ask that overt statement as a question. So I'm going to illustrate it this way. When my kids were young, we once rode their pedal three-wheelers out into a field, and my youngest was starting to get really tired, and we just turned around to go back. His legs were tired, and I said, you guys are going to have to carry your three-wheelers back to the concrete. And he looks at me and goes, I'm tired. I wonder who's going to carry this for me. And I was like, who taught you that? Where did you learn that? But what I said is, you grab a handle, I'll grab a handle, and between the two of us, we can get it back. But the covert message, I wonder who's going to carry this. He's not saying, will you carry this for me? If he said that, I might have been much more prone to say, sure, I'll carry that. But a boundary setting moment would have been to say, it sounds like you're asking me to carry that. Is that what you're doing?
Okay.
You made the covert overt, and you asked it as a question.
Yeah.
The question puts the burden back on them, and making the covert overt makes them either own what they're saying or disown what they're saying. So the covert message, hey, will you carry this for me? Hey, when you say that, it sounds like you think I'm the one who made you feel that way. Is that what you're saying? It seems to me like you're saying that if I behave different, you won't be so sad. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So bringing some awareness to it.
Yeah. And it's a verbal way of putting the hands up and saying, I'm not receiving this from you. And by the way, I'm also handing it back to you. If you don't take it, it's just going to fall on the floor.
Right. It's not on my shoulders. Yeah. So our last question, this has been so good. It's a lot of stuff to think about. So you say that intimacy can't happen with dependency. So anything that you'd want to share about that?
Yeah. Intimacy can only truly happen in interdependent relationships. remember what I said about interdependent, that both people have the freedom to think, feel, and do what they choose. And there's no covert pressure from the other person to be somebody besides who you are. So you can already see from that definition that intimacy is fostered in that. Well, the other thing about that is that intimacy dies when there's a power differential.
Yeah.
When one person is under the power of another, even if it's emotionally covert, there's no true intimacy if there's any sense of coercion or manipulation. It's simply an obligatory response, which is like the death of intimacy.
Yeah.
Yes.
It must be chosen.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's very, very true.
This is super important. I think it'll be very helpful to a lot of people. One of the ways that we get the concept of submission wrong is that submission must also be chosen.
Right.
Right? Submission is not about what you're supposed to give. It's when I give myself voluntarily. Mm-hmm. And so anytime we require submission, we make it impossible to submit.
Right. It's not something you demand from someone.
I would be so angry about submitting because I was forced to.
Right.
Yeah.
Scripture.
Right.
It makes it impossible for you to submit, because if you're forced to, then it's not a free choice.
Right.
And then you feel like a bad person because you're angry because you don't want to submit.
Right.
You can't figure out why you don't want to submit.
It feeds their thing like, see, you're not submitting.
Yeah. If I can't voluntarily say, I really want to give myself to you, then I'm not submitting. And the moment I feel compelled, obliged, or required, submission has become actually impossible.
Yeah. I don't know. I always think about that movie, The Stepford Wives, which is a really old movie, but they were like little clones. Their husbands all made these wives.
Like, right?
Yeah,
well, that's what I was.
Yeah. Well, that's
marriage,
that's of course some people like that, but that's not true intimacy.
Yeah, no, I was forced to, but that's interesting. We'd like to thank you so much once again for being on the podcast. This has given me such a greater depth of understanding of codependency. So where can our listeners find you and your materials?
So Think Differently Academy is where all of our stuff lives. Think Differently Academy is tdacad.com, tdacad.com. And that's where both our events are listed and all of our resources, our video resources. All of our books can be purchased there on Think Differently Academy in the store. And so we have so many hours of video there, as you guys probably know, that our poor website guys like, would you guys stop making so much money?
But it's such good stuff. I mean, I could have listened. There's more stuff I want to go back and listen to, because I was listening to a lot of them, but I'm like, I got to listen to that one. And really good stuff.
You guys will be the first people I say this to. In July, we're going to do another online Reclaim event. So Reclaim is our recovering from abuse or getting out of abusive relationship conference. And Polly and I, we've done 3. We did 1 live and 2 video. And so I think July, it'll be on the website, but it's not there yet. But it'll be July 7th, 8th, and 9th. And it'll be an online Zoom-based conference, but Polly and I will teach live on Zoom Friday night, all day Saturday, and some of Sunday morning.
Wow, that's great. We got a little sneak peek of that.
Yeah. And so the different levels of your programs, is there any content that's free, or is it a membership for everything?
There's silver level is free, and we always put the dynamics of abuse on that page. Dynamics of abuse, the suicide prevention stuff, a couple basic things on freedom, some relational communication stuff. So some of that's free. And then our primary subscription, our gold subscription, gives you access to the Freedom Pathway, which is 27 hours of our journey from beginning to end of finding personal freedom. And then it should give you access to like the first of every other series. And then some of the series you have to purchase, others you can just get access through that gold subscription. And I think we still have a platinum subscription, which just gives you access to everything.
Yeah, that's perfect to know, just because we have all different levels of income and that listen to the podcast. So some will want the full subscription, some won't. And so, that's great that you have
great information,
some resources.
This was great. I loved him. It was very thought provoking.
Yeah. I'm glad that you let everybody know about the abuse, because this is a podcast to heal from abuse.
Yeah, so that'd be great.
Yeah, but you told them about the Zoom conference you're going to have.
Okay. Yeah.
I was thinking that was your primary audience, so I want to make sure that people know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go to your website.
And I don't know when you guys plan to put this up, but it won't be long before that registration is up on the site.
Yeah. Thank you. This was so good.
Yeah. We just want to thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Well, my pleasure. Love working with you guys. You have great questions.
Good.
Yeah. They made you think.
Your answers are
times.
great. It's like, to me, it's like a counseling session.
Yeah.
Some of the things you talked about.
Yeah. And I think it'll be really good because this codependency, your other one was related a lot to addiction, which it is. But then you explained the 3 different types and how this was relational codependency and how it does and doesn't relate to abuse.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Because I don't think I've gone in some of those directions. So very helpful. It's because you guys ask these great questions.
And I saw that you did something I've been wanting to do. I want to do voice lessons sometime too.
I did voice lessons. I'm still doing
great.
voice.
That's great though.
Oh, singing lessons?
Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
Yeah. He posted
to.
He posted a video of him doing singing on stage.
I did an open mic last night here in town. There's a open mic night every month. And I discovered Saturday that they had open mic. Look at you.
Yeah, I play and sing, but I didn't play worship for 15 years and I just started playing again. Yeah, I just like to worship. That's my thing. No.
I've actually thought about doing a couple, like part of our YouTube channel and doing music and how music teaches us about life and spirituality.
That'd be interesting. There's such a connection there.
It brought so much healing to me being able to.
Music is very healing.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, and they can't do it indefinitely.
Thanks for tuning in to Hanging On to Hope. Check out our website, hangingontohope.org. There are resources on there, and if you would like to donate or volunteer, you can do that through our website. We are a brand new nonprofit, so we appreciate any and all support. And we thank you for listening, and until next time, keep hanging on to hope. We are evidence that there is hope and healing for you, and our passion is to help you find it too. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening, everyone.